Hello, I am Adam Hunt. Welcome to the Education of, a new video podcast series in which I talk to different people about their educational experiences and how those experiences fed into who they have become as adults. The purpose of this podcast is to cultivate conversation about ways that public education supports or fails to support learners, and at the same time, we will also gain insight into how people educate themselves in order to create and meet goals in adulthood. It's going to be great. Thank you for joining. This week we'll be discussing the education of musician, teacher, director, Broadway actor, and a dude I am pleased as punch to introduce to y'all, Josh Franklin. Welcome, Josh. This is my friend Josh Franklin, who I know through family. If he wants to talk about that more, he can talk about that more himself. So, Josh,
Yes.
you are kind of fresh off of a Broadway show that was critically acclaimed and much loved by the wider public. It didn't last very long, but
And then after that, I did a less critically acclaimed off-Broadway show that was not loved by anyone.
yes, you did. And you're writing several musicals right now. So you're a busy dude, and you're starting up some stuff here in Colorado Springs while we're waiting for COVID to pass. How are you guys dealing with COVID? I'll go ahead and address that first, since it's current.
Yeah. It's been interesting. I mean, we're actors, so we're very used to being unemployed and having to keep ourselves busy. So I think in a lot of ways we have an advantage over the normal 9-to-5ers. We're used to collecting unemployment. The extra bonus did you hear that?
Yeah.
Did it? Oh, damn, I don't know how to turn that off. Oh, well.
That's okay.
The bonus check from the government certainly was nice help, but we've mainly just been making our house look amazing. And I've been recording recording a new album. I've been working on the musicals that you mentioned. And we're toying with starting a new business here in Colorado Springs. So weird time to try to start a business, I realize, but we are just that crazy.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to talk to me in my new podcast.
Please, of course.
Yeah. So as you know, this is a podcast about people who've sort of found themselves in non-traditional, not the thing that your mom and dad like raised you to be or whatever. You're not
Straight?
an actuary. I guess, yeah, in your case. I felt a lot of
Colorado
pressure.
Springs, yeah.
I felt a lot of pressure from my dad when I was a kid, but I ended up cisgender anyway.
I love it.
Yeah, no, it's you didn't end up in a cubicle. You don't wear a tie to work every day unless it's part of the costume or whatever.
Right.
And you don't wear it to work. You put it on once you get there.
And it's quick rigged.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the sort of educational history and process that brought you to become the person that you are, because you seem like reasonably successful. You managed to be a human adult and be able to finance that life doing something that most people tend to think of as sort of a pipe dream. So what was your K-12 experience like? How did that begin to form the dude you are today? And that doesn't have to be forming the nice parts of the dude you are today either. What is that story like?
Yeah. High school was a different thing. Junior high was really rough for me. I think it's really rough for anybody, honestly. But it seemed particularly hard for me. I was with, my friends were not the best students. We skipped school a ton. I don't know if I've told you this whole story.
This was in junior high?
Yeah.
Oh, you were one of those kids. Okay.
So get ready. Yeah. So I actually was expelled from junior high because I cut class so much. And the day that I was expelled, I went to half of the day, and I went to jazz band but skipped concert band. Same teacher, kind of not so smart. So obviously it was reported, and they called my mom. And by the time I returned to school for show choir rehearsal after school, also not smart, um, I well, I won't bore you with all the details, but I had done some terrible things that day for a 14-year-old to do, and straight to the principal's office, had a meeting, and the next Monday I was at a different junior high, halfway through eighth grade. So that was kind of a wake-up call for me, and honestly probably a great thing that happened, though at the time obviously it was pretty challenging and awful.
Yeah.
uh,
Your junior high was 7, 8, 9, right? Seventh, eighth, and ninth grade.
it was not.
6, 7, 8.
Yeah,
Okay.
almost
All
six.
right. Wow. Ouch. Okay.
That, did I just age myself?
Well, you did to teachers because teachers are like,
Yeah.
oh, they were starting to do middle school, but they weren't calling it that yet. Okay.
Uh-huh.
All
I
right.
actually think I think I was only in junior high for 2 years because I was part of the transfer from elementary to junior high, but didn't do the. I don't can't remember how it worked, but um, yeah. So from there, I was a big band nerd and choir nerd, um, which ended up sort of saving me, turning my life around, especially when I got to high school because I became the drum major. So I suddenly found myself in a leadership position and had to sort of lead by example, which some of our leaders today could think about that a little bit, apply that
Yeah.
theory. Um, yeah, education wise, I was not the best student. I mean, compared to some of my siblings, maybe I was, by the time I graduated high school, I was a straight A student, but certainly up until halfway through sophomore year, I was a terrible student. I just didn't find myself caring.
Yeah.
And I think it's really challenging to find something that teenagers are passionate about. And I think that's the key. We like jam all this stuff at them that they don't care about. But thankfully, something came along the way that I was super passionate about. And in order to do that, I had to do okay at the rest of the stuff.
So was that the music or what was that the passion?
I think it was primarily band and then acting as well.
Mhm.
That sort of developed outside of school. I mean, I did the school plays and stuff, but I started doing community theater at 14, the same semester that I had to transfer to that new school.
Yeah.
I was like looking for any sort of outlet, and literally on the ground of the basketball court at recess, I saw a piece of paper that was an audition notice for this play called Runaways that was happening in downtown Colorado Springs. Had never auditioned for a professional theater or anything like that, and I went in and sang something from The Phantom of the Opera for a musical that's about homeless children on the streets of New York City. So not a great fit, but they were crazy enough to cast me, and that sort of changed my life. It was the first time that I felt that the joy of sort of releasing myself and all of the issues that I was going through and filtering them through a character.
Yeah.
Uh, so it was sort of a therapeutic thing for me at the time.
So how did academics fold into that? Like how was that motivating for you to do math or something like that?
It wasn't. No, actually, like math, I always loved words. So English was a big thing for me. Um, I excelled in math and English, and that was about it. But the mathematics side, I think, is so relatable to music. So once I started getting into rhythms and equations, they go hand in hand. Um, so that was helpful. I was in AP English. I think again because I just loved language and the power of words. Um, but the typical, I went to a public high school, and I think I had too much ADD to really excel in that environment. I think if I were to do it again, or if I were to have a child, I probably would homeschool them and find other social outlets whatever they might be interested in order to develop those social skills. But yeah, I think I don't think math and English and science and geography and all those things really played that big of a role. It was strange. By the time I was 15, 16, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. So anything else was a waste of my time. And I would let
Okay.
people know that. I was very much, stubborn in that way.
I'm just trying to pick out, because you said you were almost a straight A student by the time you were done with high school. Like what made that happen for the classes that weren't relevant to the passion that you discovered?
Well, I wanted to go to college. And I think that was enough of a a motivation for me that I knew that was part of getting into a school that I wanted. Although probably in my case, since I went to school for musical theater, probably wouldn't matter that much. They care more if you're talented, but I didn't know that. I was told I had to get A's if I wanted to go to college. So that's what I did.
Okay.
Yeah,
So then you went to college? Did you just go straight from high school to college? Like
I
started the
did.
next fall? Yeah.
Yeah, I got out of here as quickly as I could and went to St. Louis, Missouri, Webster Conservatory for the Theater Arts and majored in musical theater. That was sort of a strange experience too, because I didn't quite finish. I got my degree, but I my senior year auditioned for a cruise ship, and the faculty knew my financial situation wasn't great. And when I got the offer to do the cruise ship, they thankfully figured out a situation through acting journals and keeping voice journals and all this stuff that I could still graduate with my class and miss my final semester of college.
That sounds super
So
relevant to me right now. Super
really,
relevant.
yeah,
I haven't seen
yeah,
any of my students since middle of March. So
right.
yeah. Yeah,
Well, and
totally.
this was pre FaceTime,
Oh
pre
yes.
Zoom. So it was just they trusted me to fill out I mean, I had to turn in my acting journals eventually, but
Hmm.
it was kind of tough writing an acting journal about playing Hercules in a Hercules the musical on Disney Cruise Line. But I did it. I found that motivation.
Well,
Um,
yeah, you got to do the work that you're given, I guess, when you're. So I remember for some reason I'd sort of brain farted that you went to college, and at the same time I knew you'd gone, because I remember the last time that we were together, we were talking about your college experience, and you were like, and that was no joke. Like that was kind of all you
right.
said about
Yeah,
it.
I remember. Yeah.
What was no joke about it? Like, how did you have to dig in and dig a little deeper when you were starting college there?
Well, if anybody who's been to through a conservatory program will tell you it's very intense. I mean, you have probably double the hours of the average college student. And in my case, on top of that, I had to do a lot of work study. I thankfully got to do a lot of work study. I was like an usher at the theater. I worked in the music building. I did whatever I could to pay for my education. But yeah, we would every morning we'd start at 9 a.m., sometimes 8:30 with ballet, um, and then from there it was full from 8 or 9 until 4 p.m. Full class schedule, and then in the evenings you'd do work study or you'd rehearse your scene work for the next week, or you'd be in rehearsal for a show. So it just was like a super intense experience, but it taught me a lot of things. I mean, when I was out of school, I definitely was more disciplined than I am now. That's for sure. But I knew what it meant to wake up early in the morning and show up and just keep showing up, and eventually something will happen.
Okay.
Um, so, so that program really drilled that into me.
Cool. I'm going to circle back just a little bit to your eighth and
Do
ninth
it.
grade self, and the difference between your eighth and ninth grade self and the self that started college. Like, so it sounds like you learned that you needed to be there, but that like it sounds like you may have learned some work ethic, or does it seem like that was like what you're doing at the conservatory was something that you always had the work ethic for? It was just a matter of like the interest being introduced to you. The
I think that's a huge part of it because I was so interested in it. It was easy to be disciplined and have a good work ethic. But I, outside of my normal schooling, around the time that I was getting my shit together, I started taking voice lessons from Linda Weiss, who now she's the founder of the Colorado Springs Conservatory. And I was sort of there for the birth of it. And that prepared me for college in a lot of ways because similarly, I would go to school all day, and the second I would get out of school in the afternoon, I'd go to the Colorado Springs Conservatory and take, you know, opera history and music theory and listening class where you had to identify the composer you were listening to, classical, so it was, and again, something I'm super passionate about. So it was easy to apply myself and learn how to manage my time that way. And I think up until that moment, I just hadn't found that thing. So to answer your question, I probably did have the discipline and work ethic somewhere in there, and I'm still like this. It's very difficult for me, and I think you can relate, actually. We're similar in a lot of ways. It's
Mhm.
very difficult for me to do something if I don't care about it, if I'm not passionate about it, if I don't see, a real, the impact that it might make
Yeah.
on me or somebody
Yeah.
else.
I'm likely to just refuse, even if there's a pretty large impact for me. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. Angie and I many times have had conversations about how if like I won't work a job that I can't find fulfillment in. I just won't. I would rather be poor. I'd rather live in my car. And I've done that in the past before children. I don't know how that
Yeah.
would function now because I like my job and I have children and I live in
Right.
a house. But but every once in a while, our school district or somebody will say something that makes it seem like somebody had an idea that I really don't like, and I'll say to her,
Yeah.
it's possible I may have to quit my job in the next year or two. I just want you to know that. She doesn't like that.
Right. I'm sure. I'm sure.
But
No, I'm
yes,
the
I
same
feel
way.
that. Yeah.
Also like lived out of my car in college for a brief period of time. But that's the sacrifice we make as artists, and it can be a really ugly thing that we've chosen to do, but at times it's worth the reward, and you can wake up every day and feel like, okay, what I'm doing is making a difference. I mean, as a teacher, and I've done my fair share of teaching in the
Yeah.
arts. If you can, it's sort of that cliche thing. If one kid hears what you're saying and you change the course of their life, then it's worth it, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like I've experienced that a bunch. So it's a lot easier to embrace the day when the things that I'm working on are going to positively impact somebody's life. Even
Yeah.
this bar situation, I live in Colorado Springs. There's not
To
a
clarify, that's the business that he is putting together. He and my
yes.
brother-in-law are putting together right now. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, but it's not just for the sake of starting a business and hopefully making rent, and being able to feed ourselves, but it's a lot larger than that.
Yeah.
I grew up in this town, and I didn't see any representation of who I was as a part of the LGBTQ community.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can provide that for not just the gay youth of Colorado Springs, but the entire community, if I can in a couple of years be like, look at this thing, look at this community, look how happy and proud we are of all the struggle that we've gone through, and demand acceptance from a community like Colorado Springs, in which there are over 20,000 LGBTQ people with no place to commune, and celebrate their uniqueness. If I can if I can do that, yeah, I'd love to have a successful business, but it makes it so much easier to work all day on this project, knowing that I might give hope to some kid in high school that drives by and is like, oh, there are people like me. There's a reason to continue,
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
you know,
I think it's a tremendous idea on like all the levels. I mean, from a business perspective, it's a good idea just because it's a niche that is empty, which is crazy.
right.
Um, but you're also, supporting, like a social group that really needs it, and is underrepresented in your, not just your neighborhood, but your city. And,
Hmm.
and it's a creative act, something that you guys can really enjoy. And I think that's fantastic. It's fantastic on all levels, except for when you want to nap, and then you're screwed.
Yeah.
There will be no more naps,
No, no.
and that's very
Um,
sad.
it's worth it.
Yeah, I think it obviously is when you stack up all of the benefits to no nap, no nap, benefits, no nap. Um,
It depends on the day, but yeah.
yeah, some no nap. um, yeah. So, what was your like post college evolution like? So you got on, you got into the cruise ship like entertainment industry, which
Hmm.
we both know a lot of people who've been into that, and that pans out to varying degrees of success. Um,
Yeah.
how did that go for you, and how did you move from that to the next step?
Yeah. Well, I was super grateful, especially in hindsight, being able to work on Disney Cruise Line and then afford to move to New York without help from anyone else. You're right. Do you need a
Yep,
Ricola?
just had maybe COVID.
Oh boy. Um, yeah. So that provided the resources to move to New York, and in 3 months of living in New York, all those resources were spent, and I went back to Disney Cruise Line to earn a little bit more money and make some more connections. I'm still friends with a lot of the people I did Disney Cruise Line with, um, including Jennifer Hudson before she was Academy Award winner, Jennifer Hudson. Um, so from there, after my second time on the cruise, I went back to New York, and like I said, I would just wake up at 6 in the morning. I would iron my khakis, and I would, as a non-union actor, wait in lines all day long in the hopes that I get to sing 8 bars of music and somebody might call me back for their show. And that's what happened. I think I just knew statistically, if I showed up every single day and went to 5 auditions, then eventually somebody, hopefully, and if they don't, that's a sign you're doing the wrong thing with your life, but somebody will be interested in taking a chance on you as a new kid in the city
Yeah.
and giving you a job.
The notes you receive would probably be a better sign that you're doing something wrong with your life. But yeah, so you were doing approximately, probably less than, but approximately 35 auditions a week. Is that what I
when I,
heard? Or
when I first,
minus
well,
weekends, or do they do them
minus
weekends? I don't know.
sometimes, but not usually, Monday through Friday. um, yeah, that's about right.
That's a lot.
It
Yeah,
was a lot, but
yeah.
I knew, and I see people make this mistake when they get to New York. They get there and, well, like, first I've got to get like a job at a restaurant, and they make all of these things that they have to do before they are ready to go to an audition. And by the time they do all those things, they are too exhausted to go to an audition. They have prioritized so many other things. So I knew if I just got there and put all of my effort into auditioning, something would come out of it. And it did. And I slowly started getting national tours. And while I was on a national tour, took a red-eye flight to do a callback for Grease, which ended up being my first Broadway show. Not the original, you understand, because I am very young. It was
So
the most recent revival.
yeah. Quick question. So I'm trying to remember what the question was now. That distracted me. So it's funny. Um, when you were going to these auditions all the time, did you see kind of the same people like over and over again? Are there like casting directors who like do casting for multiple shows so that that function does networking for you? Like, did it work that way or not?
Yes, I mean, off the bat, you'd see the same people because it was all the hungry people that would get up in the morning and show up for every audition. And then as you get older, if you see the same people, your type, showing up at every audition, I know the 5 or 6 guys are going to be there for any role that I'm appropriate for.
Mm-hmm.
um, which is kind of a joke. You walk in and you'd be like, oh, hey, thought I'd see you here. um, but yeah, as soon as you gain the trust of a casting director or a director that you've worked with, that's another thing that school, and particularly Colorado Springs Conservatory, my time pre-college, taught me, is the value of just being fun to work with. I think I mean, everybody's talented, right? So it comes down to, who do you want to spend a month every single day rehearsing a show with? Like, who
Yeah.
who do you want in that room? Who's going to keep it light and fun? Um, so I had a couple directors that really got to trust me, primarily Kathleen Marshall. She's hired me for 4 different shows over the years. And that's a hint that you're doing something right, I would
Yeah.
assume.
Yeah.
So it gets that way. You get the group of people that people begin to trust,
Okay.
because and it can work the other way too. If a casting
Absolutely.
director believes in you and you come in, and I've certainly been there, you come in and it's an off day and you embarrass a casting director who's been, trying to sell you to a creative team, that can be detrimental. You might not hear from that casting director for a year or two. Um, yeah, it's an interesting business, which is why I'm getting out of it. No, totally kidding. Just
Oh
kidding.
no, you're evolving into another. It's not even
Yeah,
lateral. You're going up a little bit in my estimation. I mean, like I think the actors are definitely important, but if you've got a bad director or a bad script or a bad concept, then
yeah,
there's nothing an actor can do for you. Um,
right.
Anybody who's ever
It,
seen Sir Ben Kingsley in A Sound of Thunder, and if you haven't, you should totally watch that. But
okay,
you
well,
will need to drink a little first.
I can get behind that, I
It's
think.
really fun. Yeah. Um, okay, so it sounded like you had a thought about something you want to say there. Sorry, I sort of interrupted you.
Oh no, I was just saying, I think that's just a natural progression with anything, any job that starts out as a passion. At some point, it's going to become a job again, or for the first time, and that's when you reevaluate or that's what when I reevaluated what I'm passionate about, and writing became a huge thing for me. Writing music and lyrics and the book to a musical. Um, that suddenly just took over like wildfire for me, and I felt a lot of frustration as an actor that I was being forced to fit into other people's shoes, literally. um, and you start to feel like a puppet, and that so many people are in charge of your fate. And I think I got to a point where I needed to take my power back as an artist, and for me that equated to writing music originally, and now musicals.
Yeah,
um, and they're doing well. People seem to enjoy them, so
yeah, yeah. We're really
here I
looking
am.
forward to hearing another one sometime soon.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you decide, like, do you decide what your next goal is? And I'm going to call it an educational goal. You probably don't think about it that way, but like, you know, what you need to learn or do, or like, how do you plan that stuff? Or do you plan that stuff?
uh,
That was a lot.
Well, I think initially my response would be no. I don't plan that.
Mhm.
I just let myself get frustrated enough where I'm like, I've got to do something else. So I'll start recording an album or writing a musical, or the universe will come to you with something, and then you have to decide. Like, I'll get a phone call saying there's this great role. It's going on tour. Do you want to live out of a suitcase for a year and make some money and be satisfied as an actor for a while? And then you just cross that bridge when it comes. Or like the COVID thing, it's you can plan, you can make goals, but particularly in my business, which is why I'm going back to the COVID crisis, wasn't too much of an adjustment for me, because I was so used to the universe coming in and being like, oh, you thought you were going to be doing this? Oh, we're going to close your show, or we're going to offer you this great opportunity. So I think I'm so used to rolling with the punches that, though I am goal oriented, I know that so many outside forces can change those goals or offer new opportunities.
I think also you've been benefiting from, you've cultivated a number of like hobbies or whatever you want to call them that allow you to work on your own. Um,
Yeah.
so like as far as COVID goes, and like I am also that way, like I can just go into a room and disappear into, whether it's playing music or drawing or whatever. Um, and I have family that I live with that don't have those hobbies, and it makes their lives are different and I think harder throughout this period than mine is. And I feel like yours is probably the same way. Like you're like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna go write music then.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
And John does get frustrated with that, though he's obviously very creative. But when he runs out of landscaping or pillows that need to be upholstered or whatever, then he's doing this while I'm still working on my music, and he's like, I
yeah.
need something. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Just
we're a rare breed.
yes. For the people who are watching, the table and the bench that you can see in the background there in Josh's dining room were both made by John. He's
And I helped.
Josh provided the muscle, half the muscle, because
I
John
think
has his own muscle too.
it was more of a management position. Like I sort of just like stood to the side and was like, no, that's too bad. No, over
Oh,
to the left.
okay. I
Right.
thought you're more of a gopher, but okay.
It depends.
Okay. All right.
Depends on the project.
Depends. We'll settle on it depends.
Also, John is my lover and your brother-in-law,
Brother-in-law. Yeah.
for those who don't know.
My wife's brother. So we're 2 for 2 on podcasts that have been served to me by family. So as Mary said, that is what family is for, getting used.
Yes. Well, and we collectively have a pretty extraordinary family that has a lot of talents and interesting stories.
It's insane. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I thought my wife was a habitual liar when I first met her, actually. So, but we won't get into
Well,
that today. Anybody who returns to the podcast regularly will get a sense of why I thought that.
thought like it or think that.
Well, they will think it, and then maybe it will become past tense. That's their own problem if it doesn't.
But you no longer think they're lies. They're true
Oh,
stories.
yeah, mostly. I'd say like 80%.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the individual stories are never false. It's the truthiness of the individual story that is 80%. So
Yes.
yeah, the story has always happened. Just yeah, it's sort of like reading. Have you read The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls?
Nope.
Okay, it's like that. It's a creative nonfiction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm familiar.
yeah, you're an artist. Um, so let's see here. I had kind of one more question in that vein, which was, do you have a like process for making sure that you meet your goals, or a work process? Like my example with when I was talking to Duo Transcend, Marian Tice, was Stephen King says you have to like go sit down in your space every day at the same time and work for a certain period of time, even if your product is crap, and you need to not have your phone or television or anything else. And you just need to sit and do it. And when it's done, and you go do something else and don't come back to it. Like that's his process. Do you have a process, or do you just like, oh, I feel that and I run off?
um, I've met a lot of writers that work that way, and I really admire them because that is so far from what I do. I think I have a tendency to obsess over things, so it's it's hard for me to, if I'm feeling something, it's hard for me to step away at all. Um, and in the same regard, if something's not working, I will put it to rest for sometimes. I mean, years. There's a song on the new album that I wrote 14 years ago that I was frustrated with back then. Wasn't right, and 14 years later, I picked it back up again and made some tweaks. And
You mean you
um,
got better at your art in 14 years?
I don't know. Sometimes I think it's getting
That's
worse.
amazing.
um, I mean, I definitely have a process for each thing that I do. You know, when I'm creating a role, I do my character background. I do my script analysis. I have that process. My acting process, I guess
Do
I
you hear
would
that,
call
middle school theater kids?
it.
That's the same thing you do. All
Yeah.
right. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Well, it's funny because people think um, actors in particular don't work, like it's not work, but the good ones do. I mean, they do their work. There's research, there's character development. There are all sorts of things that separate the good from the bad, or the mediocre. Um, and similarly with writing songs, I will have to take myself to a coffee shop alone with my journal to write lyrics, and that's just sort of how I do it, which is strange. I think a lot of people excel when they're isolated, and I excel in a populated coffee shop for some reason.
Yeah, that'd be the on switch for my ADD. That would
Yeah,
not
totally.
not
That would
function
not
for me at all.
work
All the
well for me.
clinking of cups and the interesting people walking through.
Yeah, but I don't. I'm not that disciplined with my daily schedule, and this worldly scenario at the moment has made that worse. But there are days where I'll be out in our yard, like doing yard work all day, and the whole day will go by, and I will have not touched my music or musicals or anything. And then there are entire days where I blink, having recorded all day and mixed or whatever, and the day's over. And John makes fun of me because he famously, especially in our New York apartment, I'd be working on music and it would feel like 5 minutes to me, and I'd look up and all of the furniture would be arranged, and all of the laundry would be folded in drawers, and I'd be so confused. But
Yeah.
I was sitting there the whole time. But
Yeah, that flow state is like is
yeah.
serious. Uh
So I don't like to interrupt that or force it.
yeah. So just sort of a side question. When you have had a day like that, uh do you feel do you feel weird when you try to come back to the world? Like is it hard to come back even after you're done with
Oh yeah.
the yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think you've experienced that with me, like when I've tried to re-enter like the family dynamic after I've been so like lost in, whatever I've been working on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And then it's hard to pay attention to like a conversation with someone when your brain is still analyzing what you've done or all the things that you need to do to complete a song or a script or whatever it is that you're working on.
Yeah. Yeah. The worst is for me when I finish something because my brain is still in that channel. It's almost like it's carved a groove, and like
Yeah,
I don't even know what to do at that point. Like it's hard for anybody to talk to me. It's hard for me to process what's going on in the world because
yeah.
my
When
brain
I
still wants to be working on that thing, and it's not.
right, that's when I send it to people like you and ask for your opinion, and I want to keep working on it.
Yeah.
You know,
Speaking of which, I still am unable to download that one track, so we need to
really,
we need to circle back to that after I finish recording here.
I don't know how do I do. I'll ask John.
Well,
John will
I
know.
can coach you through it. I've got students who
Okay.
use Drive, so we'll figure it out. But yeah, okay. So we're gonna kind of skip sideways a little bit here, and I'm gonna ask you about your current opinions on things.
Oh boy.
Well, I mean, school is really basically still the same as it was when you were in school. Um, because it's a system and it's got all kinds of different governmental levels that it has to align to,
Hmm.
and people who are trained to do the thing are trained by people who are maybe two generations older than them sometimes. So like when I was in school to become a teacher, I was learning from people who taught 20 years before and had kind of
Right.
taught through public school and then become college professors or whatever, and then I learned from them. So there was like a generational skip where the people in between us were probably more innovative. It just moves really slow. And I'm wondering, what is your what is your take on the educational system and how we might like nudge it or fix it? Whether it's for kids like you and me or like generally, or like what would you do if
Yeah.
you were in charge?
If I was in charge,
Yeah.
uh, well, obviously, and I'm not just saying this because you are a teacher, but I'd pay the teachers more. Um, I would have more teachers in the schools so you could have smaller classrooms. I think that's a huge thing for me. I mean, if especially when I was a kid, if there was a way for me to hide in a classroom, I would do it. But if there were only, 5 or 6 students per teacher, it's really hard to not be engaged.
Or even only 15. That would be all right too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. So I would start there. I think a lot of it rests on the parents, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on the kid. Um, and I think I really admire you two because you listen to your kids, you listen to what they're interested in, and you've made it important for them to value their general education, but you care about what they're interested in, and even if it's something you're unfamiliar with, like you will encourage them to educate themselves in said interest. um, so I think that's a huge thing. I think for me, growing up in a family that knew nothing about the things that I was interested in about, they just did what they knew what to do. So they put me in football, which wasn't terrible. It was terrible. So
Worse than marching band?
yeah, much worse.
Marching band always seemed like the hardest thing to do in school to me. Like
Well,
the literal most difficult thing.
yeah, yeah. There were days when it was hot and you were wearing that, band costume.
There were every days. Every
Yeah,
days. If I remember watching them from afar,
yeah.
I was not involved.
I was in charge, so I was on the podium just waving my arms, and it wasn't too bad. Um, yeah, so I think listen to the kids, ask them what they're interested in. I think the real key, from my perspective, is making sure that they have something they're passionate about, because that's when you see the disinterest in kids, and then they start questioning their own value in this world, and then it gets ugly. I think the Colorado Springs Conservatory and the work that I've done with them, that's something that's really beautiful that they do. They bus in young kids that otherwise never have access to the arts. They've cut all the funding for the arts in their public school, and so when they are bused to the conservatory, they're able to at least find a handful of kids that suddenly have something they're interested in that takes away from whatever, painful family dynamic they're dealing with or their general lack of interest. I guess my perspective is wildly skewed because I am such an artist, and that's always been my focus.
That's why I'm asking you, though. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Why are the arts like? Why do you think everybody should be interested in funding the arts? Because what you're talking about with smaller class sizes and paying teachers more, and I'll be real, I work in a district that is amongst the highest paying in Colorado. I'm actually pretty satisfied, but I totally see that when my boys go to a different district, those teachers aren't paid enough. So that's a pretty significant tax increase. And then you're talking about funding the arts too, which like I support, but I'm asking you for your reasoning. Why why are the arts so important for everybody?
Well, I think a lot of the world is realizing that right now because we can't go to the theater, we can't go to the movie theater, we can't go listen to a concert. It just takes the joy out of life. Thank God we have Netflix. But I mean, there's tons of research on what music does to your brain. I just think in order to reach like an elevated society, we need the arts to grow and learn and to feel. It's a really scary world when you stop feeling or being able to relate or being challenged by a piece of theater that's uncomfortable or that makes you question things like, do you have racist thoughts? How do you negotiate that? How do you deal with people that are different from yourself? And I think it'd be really easy without the arts to turn a blind eye to, a lot of social issues.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, to pretend that things that are subjective are objective too. It sounds like maybe based on the subject that you named, like if you didn't have arts to sort of give you the nuance, all you'd have is maybe numbers or some sort of binary where it's yes or no or important or not important or whatever.
Right. But those aren't emotional, we're emotional
Yeah.
beings.
Yeah.
So I think the way that you really affect change is tap into the human emotional experience.
You hear that, middle schoolers? Remember when I'm talking to you about persuasion? Emotional appeal, y'all.
Well, you gave me the script before we started, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I always write this script because I have so much time. I have more time than you do.
That's my own fault. I'm just creating things to be busy about.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. We appreciate that. You doing that and people like you, especially now that we're all bored. Yeah. I'm not that bored though. We've been fixing up the house. Y'all need to come see our back deck and our newly renovated creek with baby fish in it. It's awesome.
Yes. I love your shirt, by the way.
Thanks. I like everything about it except that it's a Thomas Jefferson quote, which makes it sort of.
Maybe it's ironic.
I've actually thought about taking a paint pen and writing irony with a little arrow towards it so I could use it to teach my students about irony.
Yeah.
But, wow. We're not perfect either. And in 200 years, people will be like, I can't believe that dude said that thing.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. So switching directions again, just a little bit. What do we need to know about what's coming up for you? What do we need to follow about you? What are we looking for? And this is not really relevant to education. It's just Josh Franklin. What's he doing?
Well, we're educating people on Josh Franklin.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I do have a website. imagine it needs to be updated because I think it still says that I'm doing a play with Peter Dinklage, and I am no longer doing a play.
Pre-COVID.
Yeah. But I will be updating the website certainly when this album comes out that I'm really, really excited about. It's the first album that I'm entirely self-producing and playing every instrument, singing every vocal line. Though I think I'm going to get you to play a little guitar on a tune or two.
If we can figure out downloading, yes.
Yeah, right. So I'll put that on the website. Look out for a bar in Colorado Springs called Icons. We are looking at a property right now. Hopefully that works out. But eventually Icons will exist in Colorado Springs. Come by and say that you saw this podcast and you want a free drink, and I'll consider it. There are other things happening with my musical that I'm not allowed to talk about, but there is an Instagram page for the musical, The Consoling Mechanism. And I believe the Instagram page is just The Consoling Mechanism.
If you're interested in, not you, Josh, audience, if you are interested in the interactions between human beings and artificial intelligence, which like I am totally into, you definitely need to follow that one because this musical is going to be different from everything and groundbreaking and amazing, and the music's very good too, and I hate musicals, so that
that's saying a lot,
has a lot more weight than somebody who likes musicals saying so, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, and I try to do this with everything I do, and it's especially now. The lead of the show is a teenage girl in a wheelchair. So I've talked about education. I mean, I've learned so much just from researching what this world means and what a girl who suddenly finds herself disabled in high school, what that process might be like. And I've talked to so many professionals and read a bunch of books, and I've had personal connections with really influential people in the disabled community. So that's the other very cool aspect about this musical, giving a voice to an undervoiced community.
Yeah, I'm a deeply. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying in the theater world.
I'm a deeply analytical person, and I felt like you wrote that very sensitively. Like, I'm somebody who likes to punch holes in things just because they're there, just to see how we can fill the holes back up. And you did a very good job with that part, I feel like.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm very excited about that particular play. Not that I'm not excited about the other two that I've seen, but but this one's on my level. I feel like I'm excited about it. Yeah, not that my level is higher; it's just a separate lateral level.
You're on your own.
Mine's over here, not over. Mine's here. Yeah. Okay, dude. So we need to check out your website. We need to follow the Consoling Mechanism on Instagram. Anything else?
Check out Colorado Springs Conservatory. It's such a great school for kids that are interested in the arts. They do a lot of cool stuff. They also work with the disabled community every weekend. Support local business, support local arts. These things make a huge difference in people's lives. So do all you can to support us.
Yeah. While we're on it, Pride Month, right? Hashtag.
Yes.
That's a hashtag. Pride Month.
We put a pride flag outside of our house.
Yeah.
And my sister said, aren't you worried you're going to get vandalized? And my response was, well, what's the alternative?
Right. Being emotionally vandalized.
Yeah. Or hiding pride. That's not.
Yeah. Hiding your pride.
Yeah.
And, Black Lives Matter is timely right now, too, as long as we're hashtagging with fingers.
Absolutely.
Yep. But don't use that hashtag so that people can communicate with each other.
Right.
Okay. So That's all I got. I'm going to stop recording here in just a second, and
Cool.
we can chat this out. But I really appreciate you giving us this time, Josh. I feel like your voice is really important for teachers to hear, because uh, started out as a non-traditional student. Sounds like you corrected. Luckily, you fell into something, but you've done something that I think most people are uh, uh, reluctant to pursue, just because it's a scary thing to be a creator. Uh,
Yeah,
so thank you so much for setting an example and talking about how you got where you got. Appreciate it.
of course. Thank you.
All right.